I'm Sunny from Off the Record Lounge. Welcome back to How to Folk Punk. This is episode 3. I have interviewed Robbie, who's the drummer of Fox and Firkin. And just a heads up, they are releasing a new single sometime in October, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Otherwise, shall we get into the interview?
So I think my first question was basically how you met, like the whole band met, and what drew you into starting to play together and folk punk, and yeah.
Yeah, okay, right. Well, for starters, I mean, our we're sort of known as a folk punk band or a Celtic punk band, but that just really came about because we started a punk band and decided to we had a mandolin to play.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, what do we do? Like, so it just naturally comes across that we do this like, Celtic-y sort of thing and whatnot. And I mean, we got together just by a few. Well, the mandolin player came into my shop. I actually work in a drum shop. I'm the drummer, and he came into my shop saying, "How do I find a drummer for like a band?" And I was like, "Oh," and I wasn't in a band at the time, and I was like, "Oh, I'll just do it." And it was just like almost like a joke, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then we got together. I was like, "Oh, holy shit, this is weird. This is like got a mandolin, and how are we gonna make these songs?" Anyway, long story short, we got the band together, and the way the folk punk thing came about was that we'd been together for a couple of years, and it's kind of hard to sort of get shows and whatnot because we play Celtic punk music, and that's pretty specific and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
We're willing to pick it, and so the folk punk thing came about because we'd met this band down in Tasmania, the Dead Maggies, who run the Folk to Your Punk label, and they hadn't started that at the time, but they met us in Brisbane and were like, "Oh, you guys are folk punk," and we're like, "What now? What's a folk punk?" And so they introduced us to so many different people around Australia and to the whole scene, and we suddenly realised, oh yeah, we are folk punk, and I think it mainly is because of the not just the sort of the sound, but the DIY thing and the way that we can all go about having this mad community and all that. So yeah, that's kind of how we started and how we got into folk punk,
Yeah, cool. And you guys are located in Brisbane, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard that sort of got probably the biggest sort of scene in the whole of Australia. Not sure how big that is, considering it's quite a small genre, but would you agree?
I don't know about that. I mean, like, there's a few bands around that do this kind of thing. But in general, just music scene in general is huge here. Like, I mean, people talk about, Melbourne having this massive scene, and it does. And then, like, I don't think they realise when you actually come up to Brisbane how many venues there are to play at and how many, pre-COVID and whatnot, but how many venues there are to play at and how you can actually kind of get paid a little bit here too compared to some of the, other places around the country.
Okay.
But, as far as folk punk sort of scene and that sort of thing, it's there's a bit of it going on for sure because it's a big place. But we find most of our audiences and also just other people other folk punk bands to hang out with generally Sydney, Melbourne, Newcastle, Canberra, Hobart, and all these other places, Adelaide and whatnot. So
okay, that's interesting to hear. Yeah, everyone must think it's where they're not.
Maybe it is. Maybe it's that. Yeah, true.
Well, let's move on to the next question. I was going to ask about your songwriting process. Do you guys all write together or individually?
Yeah.
How does it go?
A bit of everything. It might just be someone will have an idea and someone else will have another, elaborate on that, or it'll be, one person might come with a fairly formed song, but there's there's never been one Fox and Firkin song where we haven't all collaborated in some way to make it happen. At the moment, interestingly enough, we've just recorded a new single, but realistically, two of the guys haven't had that much to do with it because of the COVID thing. We've been going into the studio one person at a time.
Oh yeah. How's that? It's not a bit.
It's not just because, yeah, we all live quite in the furthest points of Brisbane away from each other as well. So that's made it a bit hard. But so we've been doing the whole thing where we go into the studio, we record a bit, and then someone else will come in and record a bit and all that sort of thing. And so that's been a bit different for us too. So I guess things are changing with the songwriting process, but generally, we're all completely involved. It's it's a full team effort.
Yeah, for sure. COVID's definitely, we're all adapting to it.
Yeah.
Coming back to the folk punk scene, I was gonna ask how you would like define the Australian community of folk punk.
Right. Yeah. Well, because the folk punk scene here really has to incorporate so many different aspects of, as I was saying, we're more Celtic punk, I guess, and then these other guys might be sort of crust punk, and then these other guys over here might be, whatever. So it is pretty diverse, I think. Like it's sound wise, it's pretty diverse, and so I don't know what was the original question. How
would you define it? So it's pretty like, you could take that any way you want, but sort of what qualities do you think it holds?
Well, it's just like it is everywhere. It's all about just complete DIY everything. And when I say that, it's helping each other out. It's we live in this country that's so big that when the folk punk scene gets together, we've actually all got to chip in to help each other. So when one band comes to town, we're either putting them up or we're giving them instruments and all that sort of stuff. And it's just complete support. That's it's a real good punk rock old school spirit.
Yeah, that's a good one. Touching on diversity with the scene, I was going to say that I've noticed that it's obviously a lot of white men in the sort of Australian folk punk scene, and I was going to ask if you think there's something sort of lacking from it that's sort of drawing a wider crowd.
Oh, look, is it about drawing a big crowd? I don't know. What's lacking? I don't know. It's hard once again because it's not. I guess it's not big enough to really have this big pull with the audiences. But geez, I don't know. What's lacking? Nothing. It's great.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing the job. If there's some really, really good music behind all this stuff, and when people hear it, they like it. It's so it just needs to get out there to people. When people hear it, they actually like these bands. And if you play one of these bands in a playlist amongst all this other stuff, people don't even realize it's not some awesome international thing or whatever. So the music's great, lacking anything.
Yeah, okay. Definitely getting it out there could be something. Mosh pit story I was going to ask about. Do you have an awesome mosh pit story to share with us?
Mosh pits. Yeah, well, we don't. Okay, Fox and Firkin don't generally have mosh pits. We have more jig pits. So it's like, it's people doing the chicken dance, basically. And look, man, mosh pit stories. I'd have to say, speaking of mosh pit, we played at a place called Mosh Pit in Sydney, and the day that I'd broken my arm, and so we played the show with with one arm sort of thing on the drums. I don't know how I did that, but I somehow did it. And And yeah, we had all people from the audience all just jumping up and grabbing all my drumsticks and playing all the extra drums for me in moments,
that's
that I couldn't
story.
And yeah, so yeah, once again, camaraderie.
Yeah, the support is there everywhere. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna ask, what do you think, like maybe a tour moment or just a moment in general in your life where you've been like, well, that's like a pretty specific to sort of folk punk, like that's a really folk punk kind of moment?
Yeah, well, I don't know. We toured Japan like 2 years ago, and yeah, like those dudes kind of didn't get the folk punk thing, but when we were there doing it, they got it and they really appreciated it. It was just really funny to see people from that culture really, figuring out what folk punk was on the spot and discovering that they liked it. That was really cool. Tour moments as well. Oh, look, that once again, that tour where I broke my arm, we played a couple of shows, with the one arm thing, and that was just like a weird moment. And yeah, probably, yeah, two of the best moments. Well, that was one of the worst moments ever, breaking my arm, but at the same time, it turned into, the most memorable tour.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's good. The bad things always have stories with them.
Yeah. And then when we went to Japan, actually, Adrian had just broken his arm, so the mandolin player. So we're all like going to take turns at doing a tour with a broken arm at some point. I feel like we've got 2 out of 4 down.
Yeah, it might be your lucky charm. Is there something you had in mind that you wanted to sort of share? Anything about that you feel like I haven't touched on yet?
Oh, look, geez. Folk punk in Australia is, well, we were saying before, it's really diverse, but yeah, it can incorporate so much stuff, like it's just, in the end, it's just punk rock. And punk rock is the same ethos all over the world. Folk punk, well, I think it's kind of like it's just today's version of, crusty dudes with mohawks and all that sort of stuff. It's people doing the exact same thing and just putting a new word to it. That's all. It doesn't have to be loud. That's all. That's the difference between punk and folk punk. But no, I got nothing more to add, really.